All right, guys, I'm out in Ontario here at the lake, so we're going to get started on our front split workout number 1, and this is going to be our warm-up exercises. We have 3 warm-up exercises that we're going to use fairly dynamically to get ourselves started and entering into the first program. So the very first exercise is a quadruped hip CAR. Now, for many people, this might just simply be considered a hip circle, but it is a bit more than that. So we're going to go through the positions here. You're going to start on a kneeling position. You're going to lift the one back leg, and you're going to internally rotate your hip. You're going to lift that hip as high as you can without cramping your hamstring or excessively rotating or alternating your back position. You're then going to pull that knee out to the side. You're going to externally rotate, so pull the heel down and bring the knee all the way around in a full circle back to the starting position. You'll then repeat that by bringing the knee into the chest, pulling the knee out, then intentionally trying to internally rotate the knee as you come back to the starting position. That is 1 repetition on one side. So in full, it's going to look like this. And your next exercise is going to be a hip flexor to a hamstring stretch. So this is going to be done from a kneeling position. All right, so a nice wide base. And your first one is you're going to be doing this dynamically. So most of this warm-up is going to be done dynamically. You're going to take your hip and drive it towards your front ankle. So bringing your hip down. And sorry, you're going to hear some construction. The guys in the neighboring cabin are doing a little bit of work today. And then you're going to flow this into a hamstring stretch. So we're going to go back and forth. Now you can pick your time or your tempo at which you do this. You can hold just in and out, or you can hold each position for 5 seconds. As you're doing the hip flexor stretch, think about stretching nice and tall, driving the hip down. Now remember, we're in our front squat program, our front split program, sorry. So we're going to be thinking mostly about hip flexor and hamstring flexibility as our 2 biggest limiters for our front splits. As you go into your hamstring stretch, think about leaning as far forward as you can. Grab your toe and bring and pull your toe towards your face. As you do that, you might find some of the back of the knee, calf, and soleus work, or even a bit of the plantar fascia in that stretch. If you feel major restrictions in any one of these, you can spend a bit more time in that position. So maybe I spend 10 seconds in this one and only 5 in the hip flexor. That's totally fine. This is where you are going to make up how you want to make this warm-up work best for you, so it preps us for some of the stuff to come. This is the most dynamic of our warm-up exercises, and this is going to simply be a leg swing front to back. So you can start really small and build up the tempo as you get going. One of the things you want to think about while doing this is that you're going to keep your hips in a closed position. So you're going to hear me talk a lot about this. A hip closed position is your hips facing forward. This would be considered open. This would be considered closed. Think of headlights on your hip bones pointing forward. That's where we're going to maximize our hamstring and our hip flexor mobilization when we're doing exercises like this. I'm not too concerned if you keep your legs straight or slightly bent. All it is a dynamic warm-up to get the hamstrings and the hip flexors moving. Now you can do multiple rounds of this warm-up. All right, guys, now we're moving into the A superset. So we have A1, A2. These will be done as a alternating set. Your first one is your L-sit lift-offs. Okay, so unilateral or bilateral, we'll go through that. And then your glute squeeze hip flexor stretch. So the first one is your hip flexor lift-offs. These are end range variations. This is something that's going to be unique to every single program we do, but it's going to be done in different formats. So you're going to see different ways of programming front split work. So when you do the full end range lift-off, what you're doing is essentially doing an L-sit from a seated position, right? But only lifting your legs. So you start with your hands on the ground, point your toes, and you're simply going to lift up and control and do your repetitions here. So it talks about 12 to 15 repetitions. If you can't do this skill right here, what you do is break it down into unilateral lifts. So do one side at a time, recognizing it's easier if my hands are beside my hips doing this, harder if my hands are by my knees, and even harder if I fold forward by my calves. Okay, now what you guys can do when you're going through the repetitions is start with your hardest variation and just simply bring it back. Maybe you can do half of your reps from here or your first full set, but your second set or the remainder of your reps in the first one from here. That's totally fine. But what we're working on is end range hip flexor strength. Okay, so this is end range strength work. So you're going to be doing your end range lift offs in any variation that you can. Now, If you cannot do this or can't get to this position, what you can do is you can also sit on a block or a book or whatever you have at home, and you can attempt to do this variation here as well. It's by just doing exercises like this, okay? If you have trouble with this here, make sure to message, because we can add in other variations of exercises that will work as well. All right, now A2 is a hip flexor stretch, which is going to be brought in with a glute squeeze. So what you're going to do is you're going to get into a lunge position with your back knee down. In this position, what you're going to do is you're going to have your back foot on a wall. Now, of course, I don't have a wall. Doesn't really change it, but if you had a wall, you'd put your back foot up against it and get nice and tall into this position. And we're going to start working on understanding how to contract our glutes to pull ourselves into a hip flexor stretch. Now, of course, this does not need a wall, so if you don't have one, don't worry about it. You're going to get in a lunge position. You're going to try and get to your end range as best you can by bringing your hip down towards your front ankle, staying nice and tall as you can. This back glute right here, we're going to fire it and squeeze as hard as we can and hold that position while driving the knee down, or sorry, the hip down. So the hip is going to be driven down, but we're really focusing on squeezing the back glute and turning the pelvis around. This is going to give you a nice high hip flexor stretch in the 2 joint as well as the 1 joint hip flexors, which we can talk about in another variation. So again, squeezing the glute, pushing forward, and you can do this per side. And what we're trying to do here is get, just like the hip flexor end range liftoffs, is we're trying to learn how to use the glutes to turn the pelvis around into what we call posterior pelvic tilt. This is going to be exceptionally important for understanding how to maximize hip flexor stretching. So again, get to end range position, stay as tall as we can. Now squeeze and fire the glute and push your hip forward and attempt to imagine your hip as a bowl turning, because your glute is squeezing from the rear and it's twisting and driving your hip forward. You're going to hold this for 20 seconds per side. All right, guys, the isometric front split hold. Now, this is going to be kind of the meat and exercise potato of the session today. This is by far going to be your hardest movement to do. Most people, when they do this, always want to bite off a bit more than they can chew. Now, being this is the first program, let's start really small and ease our way into this exercise. It's not necessarily the deepest stretch, but it's going to be the hardest exercise that you're going to do. You're going to hold your best front split. You're going to use support, but you're not going to use them as something to totally lean on. What you're going to be doing is using it only as a balance aid. So ideally, I only have yoga blocks here. Maybe I could pull the chairs out. If you have a couch or the rig at the gym or something like that that you can use, that might be actually your best position. So when we get into this, what we're going to do is we're going to try and sneak our way into our best possible front split. Now, this is going to depend on each one of you as to where this is. Your front foot can be up on the heel, but it's going to create a little bit of a problem for balance. And your back foot can be up on the ball of the foot. And I might max out this yoga mat here. Now, the idea would be able to just hold this position like this for 30 seconds. Now, while doing this, you're thinking about taking your front heel and pulling it down on the floor, taking your back leg and pulling it down in as if you're scissoring your legs together. What this is doing is developing strength and capacity inside the hamstrings, the front side, and the hip flexors on the back, okay? And we hold this for 30 seconds. You're gonna be able to find that over time, you're gonna get deeper and deeper into this position, so you can just kind of crawl yourself forward, but you've got to be able to do this without fully supporting on here. That's coming in a different exercise or different program. So right now it's just about balancing and finding your best position and developing strength by trying to close that position. And you're going to hold that for 30 seconds. Now that probably will require you to have a timer or something in front of you. You'll have your phone for that, okay? This, like I said, is going to be your hardest drill. Go as deep as you can, but again, only using your supports for balance rather than actual support. Okay, so now that we've gotten through the main exercise, which should be a very challenging exercise, the isometric front split hold, we're now going to go to our C1, C2. So we're going to couple these two together. Your first one being a kneeling needle. Now this is an end range strength exercise. Again, we're going to be focusing on glutes and hamstrings. So it's an awkward exercise to get into. So I'll show it from maybe a couple different angles. You're going to get down on your forearms. You're going to have one knee underneath you with your toes up or back. I got a partner here today, okay? Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna hold on to this position, and what you're gonna do is you're gonna try and maintain square hips. You're gonna brace yourself, and all you're gonna do is you're gonna lift up your back leg. You're gonna bring it down, lift it up, hold it for 4 seconds, and bring it back down, okay? So up, hold for 4, back down. This again is end range strength on the glutes and the hamstrings. I'm talking to a camera, so can you guys get out of the way, please? Okay. And then you're gonna do this both sides. So I'll show this from a different angle just so you kind of get a different view of it. It's an awkward exercise again. So on the knees, bring here, you can put the toe underneath or back, whatever's more comfortable. Straighten the one leg out and just lift and hold. Back down, lift and hold. Now try and make this into different variations where you can kind of find different levels of intensity to it so you can get a little bit better strength at end range. All right, now C2 is a kneeling slide. Now this one I actually don't have the tools for it here. I'll have to play around with this and get this set up in a different position. But how you would do this is you'd be in a kneeling position. You'd have something like a book or something that slides in the surface that you're on. That's my problem right here, is I can't slide my front leg. You straighten out your front leg and you're going to slide it forward into a deep front split position with your back knee down. Now the catch here is I can't go back and forth in here because I can't slide back, all right? So what we're gonna do is we're gonna have a modification here. So if you have something that will move on here, all the better. If not, then what we're gonna do is we're gonna move back and forth on a different position. So what you're gonna do is you're gonna go to end range here. You're gonna get that little bit of a hamstring stretch here, and then what you're gonna do is you're gonna fold forward. So you act as if that's the slide, okay? So we're gonna think of these as like maybe front leg extended good mornings. Now I'm using a block for support. You don't need it, right? You can go down here. It all depends on how much range you have here. So I want you to kind of play with this. If I get down to this end range, it's a little bit harder for me, and that's just fine. So what you want to think about doing is driving your chin towards your toe, okay? Imagine, or your forehead. Imagine placing your forehead onto your toe, coming back up and then back down, okay? You're gonna feel this probably deep into your hamstrings on your front leg, most likely your medial hamstring, okay? So there's a few awkward positions here. Okay, so there's a few ways we can do this one. If you guys have any questions, you can put them in the comments though. All right, I got some more crew down here with me now. So now we're gonna do, to end their session, our D session. Again, it's gonna be a superset, D1, D2. So you're gonna alternate back and forth. The first one is gonna be just a forward fold, okay? So this is a very nice relaxation stretch. So you're gonna be sitting on the floor and you can kind of move yourself so you're sitting as tall onto your sit bones as is possible. And all you're gonna do is just a simple forward fold, let your head hang nice and long. Now, the catch of this one is you can also just do it here, okay? Grab your shins, grab your ankles, grab your toes, grab your feet, grab your heels, whatever makes sense to you, whatever feels best. Now what we're gonna do is we're gonna add one thing onto this, and that's the fact that we really wanna focus on being in a good compressed position. So what that means is I'm gonna lift myself up and try and get my sit bones back as far as I can so I can turn my pelvis this way. I'm then gonna lift my rib cage as high as possible and imagine folding my belly up over top of my thighs, and I'm gonna get much deeper into my stretch. And now I can kind of round my upper back, let my head fall, and hold this position here. All right, now you want to play with different positions here. Always be willing to experiment. So maybe feet in, feet out, what feels better, okay? Can you hang on to this better than the opposite position? What feels best for you, okay? There's no real right or wrong. This is kind of bringing our first workout session to a close. So you're welcome to play with this however you want. This is your forward fold. All right, now our D2, our final exercise for the session, is going to be our supine pigeon, okay? So what you're going to be is you're going to be lying down on your back and you're going to be bringing a knee to your chest while your other leg is extended. So when you do this, I want you to think about bringing and keeping your knee closer to your midline rather than having it externally rotated out. Depending on your flexibility, you might be able to reach around and grab onto your heel, wrap your elbow into the crook of your knee. That might work just fine as well. So it's going to look like this, kind of an awkward angle, but grab onto that heel if you can, grab onto that knee and keep the knee closer to the midline than farther out. But again, don't be scared to play with this and find the best possible position for you, okay? You're gonna have to move your torso out of the way as best you can. If you need to, you can just grab on with two hands like this, whatever works for you. You're gonna bring your knee nice and close to your chest. Now, some people are gonna feel this in the glutes, some are gonna feel it in the adductors. That really depends on your personal flexibility, okay? So you play with this as need be. And this again will be alternated with your seated fold. So that is supine pigeon coupled with your fold, which brings our first session to a close.